Oh boy. Hi friends. If you're new here, I am Josh, a former FINRA registered stockbroker and financial advisor. And if you're not new here, you'll know that we already talked for over an hour about Hank Green's previous AI investing video because I felt like there were some things in it that Hank wasn't fully understanding or representing correctly. And unfortunately, today, I think we need to do that again with this new video posted less than 24 hours ago that already has over 1 million views. And the reason is, I think this one is significantly worse. And it makes me really sad to say that, honestly, because it's no secret that I am a huge fan of Hank Green and his work. And for a number of reasons that we're going to talk about, I feel like these finance-related videos he's been making recently are endangering his credibility as a source of reliable information. It makes me seriously sad to say that. But that's exactly why I'm making this video, because I hope it somehow makes it to Hank and hopefully convinces him not to make alarmist stuff like this in the future in fields that he has been clear that he doesn't really know that much about. But if you haven't seen that video of Hank's, don't worry, I'm going to give you all the context you need. And if you have seen that video, also don't worry, because I'm only going to give you the context that you need to understand the parts of the video that I'm referring to. There will also be a link to Hank's video in the very tippy top of the description if you want to check it out. Now, in the process of explaining this image, which is kind of what Hank's whole video is about, he kind of goes all over the place, honestly, so I'm going to organize my response to that video into a few distinct categories. First, we're going to talk about his takes that relate mostly to Nvidia specifically. Second, we're going to do that same thing, but with OpenAI. Third, we are going to talk about the AI industry in general and how it's affecting the US and the world economy and the stock market. And fourthly, and finally, I'm going to talk about my opinions on why I really do not think that Hank should be making videos like this and how it could be seriously dangerous, not just to his audience, but also to his own credibility as he tries to do really, really important stuff in the world that could be damaged if he keeps doomsaying like this. So let's talk about it. I have no script for this, by the way. We are just diving straight in there because I wanted to get this out as soon as possible so that if people are watching Hank's video, they might land on this video somehow, because that video is going absolutely bananas right now. So let's get into it. So first, right off the bat, Nvidia's PE ratio isn't necessarily absolutely wacky. This is a claim that Hank has made in both of his AI videos so far, and he never actually gives their PE ratio or any data about this, which is so weird for Hank. I don't get it. But the PE ratio is around 50, which is high, but it's not anything crazy. Like a lot of tech stocks are in the 30s. It's just not like an insane PE ratio. Tesla's is in the 200s. Like Duolingo's, I think, is still around like 150. Like there are tons of household names, especially in tech and elsewhere, that you could find that are way, 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 way higher than Nvidia's. And frankly, that could make a lot of sense because Nvidia has been accelerating in their earnings. So a lot of the time when you have high PE ratios, it's because the earnings have been accelerating, and the PE ratios are based on previous earnings, the earnings for the most recent quarter, basically. So it often makes sense when a company has been growing very, very fast, like what Nvidia has been recently, obviously, for them to have slightly higher PE ratios. And they have a higher one than other big tech companies, but not by that much. It's not an extremely high PE ratio. And second, it is totally possible for a company to make a huge amount of money by not producing what Hank calls the end product. So Hank makes this argument that part of the reason that he thinks Nvidia's price is so inflated is because they're not actually producing the end product. The end product is useful AI tools that real people and real businesses actually use, right? But Nvidia is actually just producing like the designs for the chips, and they're not even manufacturing them. That's actually something that he also got factually wrong in the video, but he pinned a comment for that one, so that one's rectified, whatever. But a really good example here of why that doesn't really matter is California's first millionaire. I recently learned about this in a Mark Rober video, actually. So California's first millionaire became a millionaire during the California gold rush, but he didn't become a millionaire from gold. He became a millionaire from selling pickaxes to the people who wanted to get rich from gold. So you can absolutely have a perfectly fine business creating like opportunities for other people to have crazy success and just kind of giving them the tools to do so. I mean, all of this is a chain. All of this is a chain of tools that people are using to make further tools. And yeah, the end product would be AI tools for other consumers, but like Nvidia is just one step in that process. And like that doesn't make their earnings any less valid. That doesn't make any sense. Another really good example of this that Hank should be very, very familiar with is YouTube. So I made a previous video about how 97% of YouTube channels never even begin to get monetized. They never enter the YouTube Partner Program at all. 97% of channels. You could argue that they're not actually producing a platform that is useful for people to have some kind of business success on, because 97% of the people who try fail. But that doesn't necessarily make YouTube not a valuable business. YouTube is still creating a platform for people to try, and that is important, and that can be a perfectly sustainable business. Now, it is possible that this like digital gold rush basically could end, just like it's possible that people could stop trying to be creators on YouTube and then suddenly YouTube's business model wouldn't work anymore. So it is possible in the case of Nvidia that people could stop needing these more advanced chips that they're making, but it's also not even like AI is the only use for more advanced GPUs. Like, I mean, gamers use them. The crypto industry is still very, very reliant on GPUs. Like, AI is not the only thing that more advanced CPUs and GPUs could benefit. I mean, these are tools that are going to be created either way and be beneficial either way. So it's not like nothing real is being produced by Nvidia. These are real technological breakthroughs. And yes, now they're mostly driven by AI, but even if AI didn't end up being as big of a thing as people think, even if those like specific huge successes like OpenAI that we're going to talk about with all the video models they're creating, all the chatbots that they've created, like even if that's not enough, even if that just completely pops and people stop trying to pursue AI in this sort of gold rush type of way, there could still be uses for NVIDIA's designs. Like, these are still technological advancements. You can't pretend that it's only for AI. Just like in Hank's previous video, where he seemed to imply that the valuations of big tech companies right now are mostly based on AI. They're just not. Even now, these big tech companies aren't mostly based on AI. Like, Google is an ads business. Apple sells iPhones and hasn't really created anything of value in the AI space, and yet they're also a $3 trillion company. So like all these big companies, their valuations are not mostly based on AI. Nvidia's basically is, but like everybody else, it's not as if like there's some gigantic AI gold rush. Okay, Oracle too, but Apple, Amazon, Google, their valuations are not based purely in AI or even primarily in AI. And before we move on to OpenAI and the opinions around that, I should also add here too, these gold rushes, as ironically Jeff Bezos pointed out recently, these gold rushes and even bubbles that eventually pop are actually good. Like there are a lot of good stuff can come out of that. When you have these huge amounts of money just being poured into one very new technology, sometimes it doesn't really pay off, but sometimes it can pay off a lot. Like think about smartphones. Like smartphones have been like driving the economy for so long. Computers in general, imagine if people had said, oh, like this computer thing, this is a bubble, or this internet thing, this is a bubble. Let's not invest in it. But we did invest in it, and that had huge dividends. Sometimes things are overblown. Like I think crypto's pretty darn overblown. It's been around for like at least 10 years in the public sphere, but like what industry has it affected? It hasn't changed the world in any way other than these freaking scams that are now all over the place, and like insider trading that is now all over the place. Money laundering, it's definitely affected money laundering. It's made that easier. But my point is, AI is already affecting a ton of industries, and it is worth investing in this new technology to see if we can produce things that are incredible. And I don't understand when people make the argument that AI hasn't produced anything interesting yet, but we're going to get into that kind of stuff more in the OpenAI parts of this video, because we're talking about the things that, you know, these end products that are in fact being created. But Jeff Bezos' point is that when you funnel money into a new technology, you can create really, really good things. And even if 90-something% of the companies fail to produce something that is competitive or that people want, if there are like, you know, just like with YouTube channels, if there's like 3% that like really do create something awesome and valuable that people really like and that is economically viable, those 3% could have huge effects on like the future of humanity. Even if this is a bubble, even if we're over investing into AI right now, that doesn't mean that productive things won't come out of it. Productive things are already coming out of it. Even if there's no like super world changing, you know, AGI type of end product that is created, you can't say that NVIDIA's products, that their advancements, their technological advancements in, you know, chips basically, and software too, aren't like useful end products in and of themselves. They are tools that people can now use for all kinds of things, and including not AI. Or AI. So there is a possibility that they'll be used in a huge way for AI, but also for other things. Both. Who knows? Being further back in the supply chain, more fundamental in a supply chain, doesn't make you any less valuable. Honestly, if anything, it makes it more valuable. So I really don't get this argument that Hank is making here that just because Nvidia isn't making the end product, that they aren't making something useful. That does not make sense at all. But let's talk about those end products that are actually being created. Let's talk about OpenAI, because famously, they have the most popular app in the world. And now, recently with Sora 2, they have the two most popular apps in the world. They have the #1 and the #2 most popular apps on the App Store. So I have like 3 points to make here about OpenAI. And the first one I want to handle is when Hank is talking about them only having like $12 billion of income, of sales basically, versus having a 500 billion valuation. And he thinks that that is way too much and that they are not actually making a profit because they have spent more than they have brought in. And there are several flaws with that logic, and it is such a common misconception that I really need to address it. It's actually something that I was going to address in the Ben Jordan video that I made, but let's get into it. I know this sounds crazy, but in the corporate world, profits are not necessarily a good thing. We're talking net profits. Obviously, you want money coming in, but having money left over at the end of the quarter that you didn't spend on something, that you didn't reinvest into your company, is not necessarily a good thing. It is extremely normal for companies not to make a profit when they're trying to grow very fast in a very competitive industry. And growing very fast in a very competitive industry is exactly what every single AI company is doing right now. So I would be shocked if any of them retained profits on purpose. Why would you not have reinvested that money back into your company? You don't want a net profit. You don't want money left over. That is money left on the table that you could have been using to accelerate your company's progress. And when you are competing with so many other very talented people at very large companies to be some of the first companies to get a foothold in a brand new industry, you do not want to leave money on the table. You need to accelerate as fast as possible and make the best products possible so that you can get a foothold in that industry. You would not want to have money left over. You would want to have used that money for something. Fun fact, this is also why dividends are like not as big of a deal as people think they are. Like companies like Tesla, Amazon, Spotify, the Duolingo, like tons of businesses that are trying to grow very quickly don't give dividends for this reason. Why would you send that money out to investors when you could keep it in the company and use it to grow the company? That is actually better for investors in the long run, to hold on to that and use it to accelerate the growth of the company. Otherwise, you are going to lag behind the companies that don't do that, the companies that kept it to themselves and use it to accelerate. So that is why a lot of companies that are trying to grow very fast don't give dividends. A lot of companies that were trying to grow fast and are already big now, like Amazon, still don't give dividends, because if they think that they can deploy that money better within the company, that's what they're going to do. But the main point to get here is just that it is totally normal. In fact, it is the right thing to do for companies that are in a very competitive, very fast-paced industry to retain their profits or what would have been their profits and use them to reinvest in the company to help accelerate things faster. That is the best thing for a company to do. If they had leftover profits, that would be stupid. That would be a terrible business mistake. And again, it's not that you don't want money coming in. It's just to not spend all of that money coming in on something would be dumb. And I should also point out that this kind of like rapid scaling, often called like Blitzscaling or whatever, it has worked in the past several times. Like Amazon didn't make a profit famously for like a really long time, but now they are just making so much money because they scaled. They got a foothold in really important industries, and now they can use that foothold to make really good profits. Spotify did the same thing. They became the biggest music streamer in the world, and their stock was lagging behind a lot of other places that you could have put your money for a long time. But once they had their nice foothold, they can now say, okay, now we don't need to spend as much money. And then they can just let the money come in and boom, they're now making tons of money. They have a great, successful business on their hands. And I'm laughing because this is something that I didn't get into in the Ben Jordan video where, he does this with Uber too. Uber is a very popular example of a company that the business model won't work. It's like they're losing billions of dollars. And in Ben Jordan's video in 2025, he was like, oh, they're netting negative hundreds of billions of dollars or whatever. They're not. They already weren't by the time that he posted that video. They are now making tons of money because now they've built out their customer base and they've built out their whole freaking thing. And now they can just make money on it. And they are the biggest player in the rideshare space now. They have successfully reinvested all of their profits back into the company till they just have a stranglehold on that whole sector. And now they can reap the profits, and they are now reaping the profits. Same with Spotify, same with Amazon, and that will be how this whole AI thing shakes out too. If there are winners, they will be reinvesting everything that they can into their company, and then they will one day realize, oh my gosh, I have such a good foothold in the AI, and like, obviously OpenAI has a foothold. Like, they are getting a foothold. Top 2 apps in the entire app store, not just AI apps, top 2 apps. So they will one day monetize that to a greater degree. They're not right now, but they don't need to. This is how it works. This is how it often works, and it can and has successfully worked this way. And if you're wondering about Nvidia already having profits, why aren't they reinvesting their profits? Honestly, I talked about this in the previous video that I responded to Hank Green's video on, but they are making so much money. I don't think they could possibly spend it all. For their PE ratio to only be around 50 when they are like a $3 or $4 trillion company, holy crap, there is so much money being thrown at them. And like, I don't think that they could really like deploy it. Oh, wow, this is actually a really great point too. So Hank is going to talk a lot about these circular investments and how Nvidia is basically taking an equity stake in other companies to then like have this sort of circular relationship. That is one way that Nvidia is now deploying their enormous profits somehow. And like, they still, when they do this, are not netting negative. And we should talk about those circular investments, by the way. So a lot of people are thinking about this, and I have actually been thinking about this until I thought about it more as like an indication of this being a bubble where like it's just a bunch of money trading hands and like there's not actually anything, meaningful being produced. Because it is weird that when, Nvidia partners with another company and they just sort of like agree to do business together, that both of those companies would go up in value just because. But if you think about it, it does make plenty of sense. The analogy that you would use here is war. And in fact, people have used the word war to describe what is going on in the AI sector right now, because it is sort of a high stakes competition for survival on the part of these companies. So war is a pretty good analogy here. So let's imagine that each company is sort of like a band, a tribe, or like a kingdom in this war of kingdoms of companies, right? OpenAI is a kingdom, Nvidia is a kingdom, Oracle is a kingdom, Google is a kingdom, and they're all fighting to see who is going to become, emperor of the world or whatever. So let's imagine that you have a couple of front runners in this war, a couple of big kingdoms that are sort of jockeying for space and are appearing pretty successful at it so far. If two of those front runners suddenly decided, hey, let's actually merge our forces. Let's actually say, you know what, we are going to work together now to try to take over this entire continent or world or whatever. I feel like you would automatically say, ooh, suddenly those two kingdoms have a much higher chance of actually winning this war because they were already two really big kingdoms doing pretty well, and now they're going to be working together. So it is actually perfectly logical when this happens in this AI war and the AI race, that when you have two very big companies or 3 or 4 or whatever that decide that they want to work together and not compete, against each other, but with each other, that suddenly they now look more well poised to be one of the big winners in whatever shakes out here. So actually, when there are these partnerships announced and both companies' stocks go up, it actually makes perfectly good sense because the stock prices of these very, very AI heavy companies are, based mostly in AI, not Apple's, not really Google's, to some extent Amazon's, but like Nvidia's, Oracle's, like these very AI tech heavy companies, Intel, like their stock prices are going to be based on how much they're currently contributing to the AI war and also how well poised they seem to be to actually like be one of the, when the dust settles, one of the big winners of the AI war. And I will once again point out that Nvidia is in this case not necessarily like a kingdom fighting in this war. They are providing the weapons to everybody. They are providing the armor to everybody. They're this like, hey, we're going to help everybody proceed in this war together. And no matter who wins, they will make a lot of money. Even if no one wins the AI war, even if there's no crazy AGI that comes out of this, or maybe there are good tools that come out, but people can't make a profit from them very well, which is another thing that Hank sort of proposes is going to happen with OpenAI because they just don't make that much money yet from their wildly popular apps. Even if that happened, even if this AI war was super overblown, Nvidia still made a bunch of money in the process, in the fighting of this war, because they were providing the tools to fight the war. So again, it just does not seem to me to be a valid argument that Nvidia, because they only make tools in the AI war and not like the end product, like these consumer end products that are, AGI or whatever, that they're not like still doing something very profitable and important. Like they could absolutely become a gigantic, huge company that even pivots to do something else. Who knows? Maybe they do quantum computing after this. They're going to have so much money flying at their faces that they can invest it in whatever they want, whatever big thing comes up next, even if it's not AI. Point is, to summarize, if this AI war is really like a war and each company is like a kingdom in that war, when these companies invest in each other, the reason I think, it seems intuitive to me at least, that both of their stock prices could go up just because of some agreement or mutual investment or whatever, is not because like there's some, artificial inflation of earnings or something here. It's that they are now better poised in this extremely competitive environment to actually come out on top of whatever shakes out in this AI war. And companies like Nvidia, who are selling the tools to fight the war, are going to make a ton of money regardless. And the technologies that they create along the way are going to be new, useful technologies, regardless of if they are, eventually used for just AI. Like GPUs and CPUs and such are not used just for AI. Okay, so the last thing that I want to say on sort of OpenAI specifically is, Hank, everybody, let's not pretend that this company hasn't produced useful things already. And yes, like I've made videos before about how it is insane that the amount of IP scraping and stuff that they have done to create these tools has been remotely legal. Like it boggles my mind. I do not think it should be legal, but the fact is they have created things that people are using like crazy. Sora 2 became the top app on the App Store while still needing an invite link to even download it. Like that is crazy. They have the top 2 apps on the App Store. I can't repeat it enough. That is crazy. And they're both new. It's insane. This is crazy. They have created the most used stuff in the world. How are we saying that this is not valuable? How are we saying that there is no end product that has been created yet? Obviously it has. It's right in front of you. Not everybody has been Apple here. Apple has not produced anything genuinely useful in the AI, or at least impressive in the AI space, but like especially OpenAI definitely has. That exists. End products that people use do already exist, and they are getting rapidly better all the time. So this argument that AI and the AI industry has not produced anything that people actually use or that is useful to people and businesses is just so false. It is not true already. And I say already because like obviously we're probably going to keep proceeding toward more and more tools. Like they're going to make more and more things and people are going to use them more and more. And like we're on the fruit. Like this stuff is progressing so fast. Like Sora 2 is now giving us extremely realistic looking video. Soon enough, it will be perfectly realistic, like indistinguishable from reality. That's like the first barrier that AI, pictures, but then also video has been facing. Like we had the old Will Smith spaghetti thing now. Like you could probably generate something of Will Smith eating spaghetti now that you could not tell the difference. And that has only happened over the course of like 2 or 3 years. That is a blink. So anyway, my point is, even though I do not agree with OpenAI's methods in producing the things that they have produced, they have obviously already produced things that people use that are useful, and they are clearly still accelerating in the quality and usefulness and intrigue, whatever, of the things that they make. We haven't even, put AI into like self-driving cars and stuff on a large scale yet. We haven't even put AI into like customer service. Like you call your credit card company, like we're still not even using, nice sophisticated AIs to just answer questions like that. Like that's crazy. That's going to happen. Like there's going to be so much useful AI stuff. And like, I feel like I'm going to get some pushback on that, but like how is anyone doubting that AI is going to be useful. How is anyone doubting that? Top 2 apps on the App Store. Okay, so I'm gonna calm myself down and talk about my happy place, the stock market. So let's talk about the AI sector in general as it relates to the US economy and the world economy and the stock market, people's jobs, stuff like that. So I feel like when Hank Green talks about this, and when a lot of people talk about this, they're talking about the AI boom being a bubble in terms of the stock market. I have already given quite a lot of opinions on that in the longer video I made about Hank Green's previous AI and investing video, but here's just a few more. So again, as Jeff Bezos sort of pointed out, even if this AI thing is economically and in terms of the stock market a bubble, that doesn't mean that nothing productive will come out of it. Like if this bubble pops and suddenly the stock prices of these companies have gone down, like we're already creating a lot of really interesting, useful innovations because of AI. Like, I mean, I'm a scientist, right? So I still don't know how many people know that I've mostly done neuroscience with my life and not finance and YouTube. But anyway, we've used machine learning in neuroscience for like quite a long time. Before, I think significantly before ChatGPT came out, we were already using AI in science. And there's like really, really popular examples like AlphaFold. People figured out how to use AI to predict how proteins fold. And suddenly we knew how every single protein in the world that we know of, the proteins we know of, were folded. We used AI to crack an absolutely huge problem. And that happened a long time ago. People talked about it for a sec. And now, for some reason, people are forgetting that like AI has already revolutionized so many different industries, including science. Like Hank should know this. Hank should know about AlphaFold. Like, I don't get this argument. Things like that, useful tools like that will come out and they will be awesome. And like, yes, there will be tons and tons and tons of things that don't work. There will be chatbots that are stupid. People are going to use this for like adult purposes. There's going to be tons of things that don't like change the world in any dramatic or positive way. But there will also be things that probably do. Or I should say there will probably be things that will. And things like AlphaFold are an example of that. And that was from, wait, let me look this up. When was AlphaFold? When did that happen? AlphaFold. December of 2018. So in December of 2018, AI had already created something that solved an enormous problem in science, which was how proteins were folded. And that is super, super, super useful for creating like drugs, for understanding protein-protein interactions, stuff like that. That was in 2018. So how are we still talking about how AI has not produced anything useful? Like just because you don't find chatbots that useful doesn't mean that AI is not producing world-changing technologies. It is. It has for a long time. 2018, before ChatGPT was even a big thing. If you want another example, there's this thing called Deep Lab Cut. And obviously, none of these are sponsored. That'd be hilarious, though. But a lab that I previously worked in used it to automatically score behaviors of mice when you do behavioral assays. It's super, super useful. You can just kind of set it up, and then it'll automatically score these behaviors. You used to have to get undergrads to do that. Or in rare cases, even like PhD students and postdocs scoring behaviors, just sitting there for hours, like watching mice behave. Extremely useful AI tool. Let me see when that came out. Oh, okay. So Deep Lab Cut also came out in 2018. So 2018 was a very good year apparently for AI advancements that helped science happen faster. So this narrative that AI hasn't produced anything tangibly useful as an end product is just completely incorrect. And those kinds of advancements are facilitated by all of this money that's just being chucked at AI right now. So without all of this crazy sort of like, honestly, yes, I agree, reckless investment, you wouldn't get these occasional diamonds in the rough that like, you know, revolutionize a whole field of science or a whole way that we do things, you know? And that is normal. That is how betting on the future works. That's how investment works. You have to invest in things that only might succeed because otherwise they're not going to get an opportunity to succeed. And again, that's only at the end product level. At the Nvidia level, where they're, you know, designing new chips and stuff, we are making real advances in computing itself. They are making technological advancements in the process of feeding this AI war. These are real advancements, and there'll be advancements even if AI doesn't become as economically successful as a lot of people are clearly thinking it might. And I should clarify on that point, by the way, I'm not saying that I think that the prices of companies right now are super justified. In fact, I'm still kind of feeling like they're a little bit inflated, especially in light of the fact that a lot of economies around the world, especially the US economy, is looking bad, like much worse over the past 1 year, and yet stocks are looking much better over that year. I don't know how long there can be that disconnect without stocks coming back down to like the reality for regular people. That's something people are talking about a lot right now, and I do think it's justified to be asking those kinds of questions. So I'm not someone who's just saying like, oh no, the AI hype is completely justified, and like the prices of all these companies are completely justified, and like this stuff is going to change the world in this way and that way. I have no idea, but I definitely know for a fact that it's possible. And I know that we're going to make a lot of really cool advancements along the way to trying to change the world with AI. We're going to break a lot of stuff too, probably going to be really bad for the environment, but like we're past that. Things are bad for the environment already. Capitalism. Okay, so I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting here, but I really want to get this video out like 4.5 hours from now, and I still have to edit it and stuff and eat lunch. So I'm going to move on to the last section, which is how I feel about Hank making videos like this. And this is like really hard for me to talk about, but like I really feel like I need to say this. I am such a fan of Hank Green. Like I have always been. He has inspired me in so many ways. Like it's crazy. And that is why I feel like I'm very sad to see him making videos like this about something that admittedly, he has been very, very upfront. He doesn't understand it very well. Like he's not a finance guy, but that is why I feel so sad about seeing Hank post stuff like this. Like the previous video I made about Hank Green's previous video, I said that I felt like the misunderstandings were reasonable, and I do still feel like that. But like this is it, but you could like Q test that out, to use a scientific term. It could be an outlier, you know? But like now that he's making multiple of these videos and like with all this finance and business stuff that's just not well represented, like he's not giving data on this stuff. And I get that it's kind of like a futurism thing too, but when you're taking a business component into it without understanding how business works and how finance works, how the stock market works, what's inside of his funds, I feel like he probably didn't even really look at. Like I feel like you're in dangerous territory here. And yes, like anyone can talk about whatever they want on the internet, but I kind of feel like as an education creator, and honestly, one of the biggest educational creators in the entire world, I feel like you do have an additional responsibility to, you know, as Hank says in the end of this video here, like stay in your lane, because Hank is not an expert on this stuff. But if you trust Hank, as I do, then you might think, oh, Hank knows what he's talking about here. This is something that I should consider. We have a potential economic catastrophe just on the horizon here. And like from the information that Hank is giving you, you can't even form a cogent view of what's going on, because he's missing these integral pieces of why prices are moving the way they are, why people invest the way they are, what like profit for these companies looks like versus just building value. These are fundamental parts of the story. And when you're doomsaying like this, especially about money, like people could make investment decisions based off of stuff that Hank Green is saying here. And that could be terrible for them. I really have so many conflicted feelings about this. But these are some of the things that I think were wrong with this video, some of the things I feel like were left out or misrepresented. And I just wanted to kind of get it out there and express that, like, I hope Hank doesn't keep making stuff like this, because I'm going to find this comment actually, because I had a comment recently that someone put on one of my Instagram videos about Hank Green, because I made that previous video about Hank Green. Someone commented, Hank Green's the next Bill Nye, in my opinion. He went from informative, trusted source to fear-mongering for attention. And I was very sad about this. I was very sad to read. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe someone thinks that about Hank Green. So I said, I definitely don't see it that way. I feel like he's just as often debunking some alarmist thing as he is raising alarms. And the alarms he does raise tend to be reasonable, at least in my opinion. I have a huge amount of respect for him, and also Bill Nye. But since I've read that comment, and since I've seen more videos like this from Hank, I really hate it. But I'm starting to agree. Like, I feel like you need to take the stuff that Hank says about finance and AI with a grain of salt now, because he's raising these alarms over and over, and in like these really convincing ways, obviously, because Hank is a very convincing person with a lot of previous reputation of being right about things and knowing a lot about a lot of things, understanding things well. But on these things, Hank has been very, very wrong. Or not very wrong, it's just that he's not giving you the full story. And when it's an alarmist story, I feel like shoving that out into the internet as a very, typically trustworthy person is dangerous, because now you are forming the basis of how people think about the economy that they're in, the age that they're in. You're affecting consumer sentiment. Like, these are things that can be self-fulfilling prophecies. This is really important stuff. And like, I really don't like that I'm making this comparison, but it feels kind of like the Ben Jordan video where he's doomsaying about the end of capitalism as we know it, and then like using a bunch of okay, to be fair, Ben Jordan was way worse because he was using, extremely manipulative data to present his points. Hank is just leaving out stuff that I feel like is very, very important, and I don't think he's doing it on purpose. But like, if Hank keeps coming out with these videos that being like, oh, like this is a bubble that could pop any moment, and like the thumbnail of this video, let me find it. The thumbnail of this video says, "The anti-bubble case makes 0 sense." That's not true. And that feels to me like fear-mongering, maybe not for attention. I don't think that Hank is just doing this for views. I mean, his videos about AI do get a lot of views. I don't know if he's been seduced by the views, but like, dude, I do not want to think of Hank Green as someone who is misinforming the public. I do not want to think about Hank Green as someone who is now the boy who cried wolf. Because if he is saying like, oh, the world is ending for this reason, and you can point to reasons, point to experts saying like, no, that's not true. And he even says like, no, people who know more about this stuff than me are saying this is not a bubble. They're saying that it makes sense. Maybe it does make sense, Hank. But if you are the boy who cried wolf in all of these doomsday scenarios, if you're always making videos about how everything is going to crap, a la Graham Stephan almost, then like, what about when things are really important? What about when you're talking about, maternal mortality in Sierra Leone? What about when you're talking about tuberculosis? What about when you're talking about vaccines? Like, it is so important for this man to retain his trustworthiness. And I feel like if he keeps making videos that are outside of his expertise, especially these sort of like doomsaying type of videos, then his reputation could degrade. And I would hate to see what that would do to the really, really important work that Hank and his brother do to make the world a better place. So, Hank, if you're watching this, please stop. Please stop. Or at least consult with an expert. Like reach out to Plain Bagel, for example. That guy knows his stuff way more than me. Like, if you want to make a video about finance and the economy, the world, reach out to like Plain Bagel, reach out to the Money Guys on the Money Guys show. They will give you great information. They will give you the perspectives that you need to have a better representation of these financial concepts. And I really would urge you to consult someone like that before you make another video like this, especially if it's a doomsaying alarmist type of video, because that can really have negative impacts, not only on the people who are hearing this stuff, but also on your reputation as you try to do the work that is so important in the fields that you are absolutely an expert in. Like, I want to be clear, I have never heard Hank say anything about science. As a scientist, I've never heard him say a single thing about science that I thought was wrong. But in these 2 videos about finance, oh my gosh, they just don't feel right. And it makes me sad. Anyway, send this to Hank Green if you are a close personal friend of his. I don't think I've got anything else to say. Blink all the YouTube buttons if you want to. Subscribe to help me get to 1,000 subs, because that would be nice. I'd really appreciate that. Okay. See you in the next one.